So all these recruiters are like, oh, you're not going to be able to break in right away. You're going to have to start off a lower tier, low tech med device, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I just didn't believe that.
Being okay with not being the right person for the wrong company. I went through 14 different interview processes when I was trying to break in originally. I would end it. I can't wait to be a part of your company. I can't wait to make an impact. But if you don't choose me, that's okay, because someone else will, and I will make them very happy.
Believe it or not, people still do business with people just because they like somebody.
Yep.
And so as a rep, you have zero authority to change your product. You have zero authority to change your business model. What you do have the capability of is just becoming a lot more likable.
Yeah. It was when people got off the call with me, they felt better than when they got on the call with me.
Factually, I have no experience in medical sales, but the truth is I have a lot of experience. I know how to work hard. I worked on a farm.
Yep.
I know how to be disciplined. I know how to be very creative in solving problems. When I don't know something, I know how to go and read and
build relationships, all
and
this
so
stuff.
We make things that are goals when really those goals have to be byproducts of something else.
You're 100%. Just to give you a little tip for entrepreneurship or anybody, even in sales. Welcome back to First Year in Medical Device Sales. I am your host, Jacob McLaughlin, and today I am blessed to have not only a very good friend, but my mentor, Mr. Omar Khatib, who is going to be able to bring you all so much value. If you guys haven't watched older episodes, we've had him come in and talk about being a LinkedIn specialist. We've also had him come and just share his journey, how he was in the med device space, able to be with a company that exited. But I'm going to give him the mic to just let him give you a little bit of what he does and all the things that he's accomplished, because there's a lot of them and it's easier for him just to talk about it. But we are so excited to have my good friend and also mentor, Omar Khatib, on today's show. Omar?
Thank you for having me on, Jacob. And I got to say, I'm super proud of you, because I remember when you first started at New to Medical Device Sales a couple of years ago, and you were just doing it out of your room. And now you have your studio, you're doing extremely well. The business is taking off, and more importantly, you've helped hundreds, maybe I think at this point, thousands of people break in. So really proud of you.
Thanks, man. Yeah. It's kind of funny. People don't know the real story. We could kind of touch base on that real quick before we have you dive in.
I'll touch into, so why should your audience listen to me? So for me, little background, first generation immigrant. My dad's from Iraq, mom's from Turkey. I grew up on the border town of El Paso, Texas, went to UTEP. Like most people, I was pre-med. Unlike most people, I actually stuck to it. So I ended up going to medical school at Texas Tech. About halfway through, I decided to drop out of medical school around 2011 or so. Fortunately for me, I was on a scholarship, so I actually didn't have any student loan.
Love it.
Thank God. That makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, huge.
And, like your audience, I was trying so hard to break in. And for the audience who's listening, this is not really to discourage you, but just to tell you, everybody struggles to get in. I was a medical student. And even me, I struggled to get in. So for the first year, I was doing door-to-door sales for a collection agency. Recruiters, which for every one good recruiter, I think there's a bunch of bad ones. Yeah. So all these recruiters are like, oh, you're not going to be able to break in right away. You're going to have to start off, in a lower tier, low tech med device, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I just didn't believe that. And so I got a break where this recruiter reached out to me. He said, hey, I actually noticed that you dropped out of medical school. There's this little company out of Israel that's a robotics company. And they had 2 medical school dropouts just like you, and they're doing great. Do you want to interview? I'm like, yeah. And that company was Mazor Robotics. It was the world's first robotic spine platform. And of course, robotics is really hard to get into now. But back then, getting into a robotics company back then in 2011 was probably as competitive, if not more, than getting into a true AI company now. And so I got in, and robotics was at the top of the heap. So I started off in sales. I carried the bag, but I was really interested in marketing, because I saw marketing as sales at scale.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so I, moved into marketing, and as they say, the rest is history. I worked in a lot of disruptive med device companies. Mazor got acquired by Medtronic for about $1.7 billion. And then I worked at, another robotics company, and an AI company, a SaaS company. And my career in marketing was really focused on making money, right? Because most marketing in our industry is product management, which is fine.
Yep.
But I wanted the commercial side, because I wanted to be on the money side.
How are we driving revenue?
Exactly.
Yep. And
so this will kind of segue into what I do now. So back in 2014, I was following Andrew Chen, who was VP of Growth over at Uber, talking about the VP of Growth is his new VP of Marketing. So I was like, what's growth? What's growth marketing? Started learning more about running paid ads, using digital and all these interesting channels to drive growth.
Yep.
And back then, people in our industry, and I'll never forget, there are people who are high up who thought that was crazy and that I was just like a silly kid that like there's no way you can actually do deals and drive product adoption using social media. Well, that turned out to be right. And so this will kind of fast forward to what I'm doing now. So back in, I think 2022, I started my own business. First, I started with a course that taught people what I do, which was how do you use things like LinkedIn and social media to generate deals, to drive adoption, etc. Did that for this is when I reached out to you. So I reached out to Jacob because, you know, I have an eye for like really talented people. And I saw Jacob back then. He was working for a company and I was like, man, this guy's really talented. I reached out to him and we were talking and I told him, I said, hey, I was like, look, and this is on the first call we talked about. I was like, look, I know that we're just meeting right now, but can I give you one piece of advice? And James was like, yeah, of course. And I'm like, please raise your prices. He was charging like
we had
$200 or $300 for this amazing course. And I was like, you need to raise your price.
We hadn't even actually launched it yet. We talked about what we were about to do.
Yeah.
And then I told him the price I was about to go. And he's like,
yeah, that's right.
He's like, for the love of God, don't do that, please.
And the reason why some of you are like, oh, Omar, thanks for doing that for us. The reason why is that you want to charge as much as you possibly can because which Jacob does, you can reinvest into the product and make a really good product, which is why he gets great results, right? But also you just get better quality students, to be honest with you.
Yep.
So I did that the first year. And then over time, my business evolved. So now we have an agency. So what we do now, my marketing agency works with med device companies and digital health, med tech startups to essentially raise money from venture capital and also commercialize their products using social media.
Love it.
So that's the main part of my business. We do sales trainings, we do all those things just because we have that course. But big thing that somebody comes to us and pays us money for is like, hey, we need help raising money. And then when we raise money, we need to commercialize products. So if you ever start a business, I always recommend like get as close to the money as possible because it's, it just makes things a lot easier. And then the other side is that we have a podcast, which I'm very proud to say is the #1 show in medtech. We're not the #1 medical sales show. That would be Jacob's show, this one now. But our main show, The State of MedTech, has been going on for almost 3 years now. And aside from like highest reviews, most downloads, etc., we have a lot of great guests that come on. Some of the guests,
amazing guests.
Yeah, and some of whom I want to come on your show actually. So we've had CEOs, investors come on, VPs of sales, marketing. It's kind of like the Joe Rogan show of our industry because we cover so many different topics. We even had Martin Shkreli on when he came out of jail, who's actually a really smart guy. I really like the guy a lot. Anyway, so that's kind of my story.
And this is the thing I love for everybody just watching is you get to hear how wide of a variety that you come from. And it's so deep because the #1 thing that I always tell our audience is, yes, we want to break you into medical device sales, which we can talk about in a little bit. But the biggest thing is, how do we continue to help our members, our students, our people get developed to just have success in life? And what most people don't understand is, this is why, people have always maybe saw me in a different light when I was the young, hungry kid. I got all the DMs from people who had been in for 15, 20 years. But I even have these conversations now with our people. It's like every day I get the opportunity to work with CEOs. And I always say at 30 years old, if I want to come back into the industry, because now I do us full time, I'm not coming in as a rep or a manager. I'm going to sit on boards. I'm going to talk with actually CEOs. I'm getting paid by companies, which you're already doing.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that to everyone listening, that's not me trying to come off arrogant or cocky. I do make this really, really clear for everyone. I've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in self-development, skills, acquiring new things. So I can
still do
and be in that same spot. But because my whole thing is what we teach here is I'm not only having our members come into, hey, hope you break into med device sales at 60K. We get our average at over 6 figures, which everyone says is impossible, but yet we do it every day. But the reason I'm saying that is then we show those people how to progress and to make $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. It's definitely doable, but every rep that's been in for 3-4 years in ortho that's not even making 115 grand is going to say we're crazy. And the reason I'm just saying that is that's why you guys, I'm so excited to have someone like Omar is he's doing the VC. Like what people don't understand is he's working with companies that are raising $5, $10, $20 million to then bring a product to market, which is going to go into reps, going to build out the portfolio, like what they actually need to do. So I think that's really exciting for today's conversation.
And look, like for your audience, like I always say the higher you can sit, the more opportunities you're going to have.
Yep.
And so as an example, I tell people like it's free. Go listen to my show because where else are you going to listen to, for example, on actually this coming Wednesday, I'm doing it in person. Ray Cohen, who's the CEO of Axonics, who got exited for $3.2 billion. He's coming on my show and we're having a conversation literally about what did he do to leverage that deal?
Yep.
We had Mark McKenna, CEO of Prometheus, which is a biotech company. They exited for $13 billion to Merck.
Yep.
There's a 45-minute episode on my show where we talk about the kind of things that he had to do when dealing with Wall Street, dealing with the market, fighting with Pfizer,
Yep.
right? And so I think the more you're able to listen to people like that, the way they talk, the way they think, it starts to ingrain you,
Bam.
right? So then more importantly, if you go to some kind of an event, and I would say, there's this thing in Japan called Ikigai. I have a software business also called OmniCreator.club for which you're a user of, which I appreciate.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's mainly for content creation on LinkedIn. So go to OmniCreator.club, you can check it out. There's this thing called Ikigai where you do this Venn diagram to figure out like, what does the world need? What are you really good at? What are you passionate? To figure out what you're best at. What I'm actually really good at, I'm very, very good at not only meeting people and making friends, but also connecting. Because I looked at the people that I know, not just in our industry. There's some, like, I don't want to name drop, but let's just say some really big names and influential people, like online, that I've found a way to meet.
Yep.
And part of my thing is like, well, how do I, like, what is it just that I'm lucky? Part of it is that I spend so much time learning from other people and reading.
Yep.
So, for example, when I go to LSI's Investor Summit, right, and I meet an investor or somebody who's, had billion-dollar exits, I've listened enough to have a few questions or just talk so they feel like they're talking to a peer.
Bam. That's what I was just going to say.
And I think that's a big part of persuasion, because the more somebody's able to like you and relate to you, the more likely they're going to be able to trust you, so on and so forth.
Yep.
You know?
You're 100% on that. And the reason I say that is because it's the same reason why I've only been able to grow my career is, as a 25-year-old kid, even though I had no money, I was training guys who are making 10, 20, $30 million a year. One of the guys I know has a national grocery store that's throughout the United States, hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm getting to be in their life and they're talking to me certain ways. And I just started getting to see that. The reason I just say that to everyone is like what Omar's saying is I was listening to books and podcasts about people that are making hundreds of millions of dollars when I made no money. But when I would go sit in the rooms or go interview with these companies, if someone made $300,000, I wasn't drooling. I wasn't like scared. It was like, yeah, I've already trained guys who made that in a month. So great, I can have this conversation. And there's a confidence to be that peer-to-peer, even though you're not there.
Yeah, and I mean, the other side of it is, I'll relate this down and bring it down to earth to, like, let's say the people who are trying to break in is like, how is this helpful to me as a rep?
Yeah.
Well, as a rep, think about who you're dealing with. You're dealing with surgeons who are making well into 6 or 7 figures.
Yep.
And all of medicine, whether it's surgery or internal medicine or something, they all have this culture of continuing education. So it's not coincidental that when you talk to a surgeon, they're very knowledgeable about not just medical history, but like other random things. Like maybe they're into working on cars. They have this hobby or that. And when you develop a relationship with any customer, you can't spend all your time talking about your product, what you're going to do. A lot of times, look, like, I know it's 2024, but believe it or not, people still do business with people just because they like somebody.
Yep.
And so as a rep, you have zero authority to change your product. You have zero authority to change your business model, all these things. You have what you do have the capability of is just becoming a lot more likable. And I think that's an underrated superpower, which is make people not only like you, but say like, man, I would hang out with this person outside of work or outside of our professional engagement. Because at that point you have a lot of leverage and persuasion. And I think the more important part is that the more coachable you are, the more likable you are, the more likely that people are going to go out of their way to help you.
Bam.
And I think if you want to talk about this like in a metaphysical way, I think a lot of the world works on your ability to leverage luck.
Yes.
And so I think, and I spend a lot of time thinking about this, which is I deeply believe that I'm actually a very, very lucky person just on how my life is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to figure out, I'm like, well, I have a son. I'm like, how am I going to teach my son how to be lucky? And so I kind of distilled it down to a few things. Like, number one is that you're extremely likable, right? And what does it mean to be likable? That you're willing to listen, you're more curious about the other person, and you're more willing to help the other person, right? That's number one. Number two is you're creative, right? Creative and positive. So if you have a positive mindset, you're constantly scanning the world for like things that are going to be stacked in your favor and not for reasons why you're not getting something. No victimhood mentality, no negativity, right? And then if you're creative and positive, like things will just kind of come to mind that no one else would have thought of, right? And then the last two, which I think are extremely important, is number one is you're very disciplined, right? So you have good habits, you commit to them, no matter what day of the week it is, and then you take action. So to kind of like repeat that back, it's being extremely likable and coachable, having a positive mindset, and being creative, being disciplined, and taking action every day. If you do that, no matter what you're doing in life, like you will find success, and success will find you.
Yep. Exactly. And that's one of the things I guess I've listened to a lot of people and a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and they say, you're not lucky, the luck's finding you because you're putting yourself in those positions to be lucky, right? And I think that's always you, right? Oh, this overnight success, but they don't know the 10 years before the overnight that they succeeded, right?
Exactly.
And there's that likability. So I think you're 100% on is just putting yourself in. And why we're putting this out for everybody here is because, again, I just always hope you guys know and hear my heart. Breaking you guys into medical device sales at this point is extremely easy. Like just to touch base on medical student, one of our boys, JC, which we'll have him on the podcast, just got hired with Medtronic, former med student. We got him hired through the course, starting at 6 figures. Like it's a lot of fun. And now we're having those conversations with the med device companies, and I'm really appreciative of it. And it's all amazing. But the reason I'm saying that is that's the easy part. But again, to everyone who's watching it, it's not easy because you haven't done it. But when we've helped thousands of people, it's like riding the bike with the eyes closed. We can do it. But the bigger thing is I'm also here, and this is what I always have told people. Everyone will come and see how many testimonial videos we have. And I'm like, do you think it's just because we helped them in breaking into med device sales? Nah. We're here to help them in life and make them think differently and see differently.
And you built a community, to be honest with you, because of all the programs that I know that are out there, yours is the only one that like, you have this great podcast, you invest in it, right? Like this studio, doing this, your time, like we're doing this on a Saturday. This all costs money, right? Mm-hmm. So you're doing this for people for free.
Yep.
You have your communities, you've done these meetups, you put out a lot of content online. So like you've done all the right things to help these people as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a transactional thing.
No. Well, and that's the whole thing is what people don't understand. And we always say this is it never was about money. I got on thousands of calls. That's the only reason I was able to.
You did. Yeah, I was going to say, I learned a lot from you because like actually when I started my podcast, like I took this, I never told you this, I took this idea from you, which is when you started your podcast, you were doing all this for free, I think I think you helped like 200 people or something like that. Like just while you were at Medtronic trying to just tell people what you did.
Yep.
And then all you did was like turn around and just say, hey, like, can you just do me a favor and give my show a rating?
Yep.
So now like, actually that's part of my thing, which is like, anytime somebody wants to help me, I mean, I'll take as much help as I get, but I was like, main thing, go to State of MedTech and give us like 5 stars in a review.
Yeah. And it's just, well, because again, it's just that transfer of value. But yeah, going back into now really being able to help you guys if you're trying to break into medical device sales or you're in med device sales, maybe looking for a new job. Omar has a lot of great tips for persuasion. He's done a lot of different interview processes, so we'll be able to dive deep into that. But I just always want to come on this show and always just make sure you guys know is like, again, the whole goal of this is like we always say, don't need anything from you, don't want anything from you. We're just here to help you and hopefully give you advice and maybe have you start thinking a little bit differently. Because why me and Omar are both sitting here and we're not 50, 60, and we're being able to work with these large med device companies, having contracts and conversations with massive med device companies and help them is because of the drive, being able to keep learning, getting mentors, getting people that are smarter than us, but then being able to share.
And you look, you're very, very humble, but I'm going to call it out, but you are extremely talented. And like, no matter what, at the end of the day, people are attracted to people who are talented and driven.
Thanks, man.
Right? Have good, positive energy and mindsets, That's, it sounds like really cliche, but it's really true, to be honest with you.
I do want to touch base on that because you said it earlier, but that was one thing I did want to touch base on is when we talk about the luck, right? Being positive and all this stuff. I always share this with our members. There's either energy givers or energy takers, right? Mm-hmm. And we all know them. You get on a call with somebody either sucks the life out of you or you're like most people that listen to our podcast are like, I'm ready to go run through a wall. And the reason I'm just saying that is it's one reason I can fall asleep so fast at night because I just give all day, but I want to have a positive interaction with people and no different whether it's a friend, it's someone I'm talking to, it's a relationship or it's business. And the reason is one of the CEOs we're working with on a contract right now with med device companies of placing people, which is fun. And we'll talk about that in the future is, she messaged me after our last meeting. She's like, you make me want to run through a wall and made me feel like I drank 2 Red Bulls after talking to you. Mm-hmm. And it's just because of the energy and the outlook I have on life. And like for me, I always tell people, if I'm talking about it, I'm passionate about it. I love it. If there's things I don't know about, I'm not going to talk about it. It's kind of the Gary Vee stuff. Just stay in my lane. But I always just say that because a lot of you guys right now will sit here and say, I have nothing to add to a conversation. I have no value. And I'll sit here and tell you one of the biggest things that helped me stand out to get into medical device sales was not only, yes, coming prepared, doing the hard work, being able to have communication skills, yes, but it was when people got off the call with me, they felt better than when they got on the call with me. And that was just the positive outlook I had on life, the talk with them, the energy, the upbeat.
And let me comment on that real quick. This is something that I see with a lot of people that I mentor, or at least when they first come to me, which is, I think when you're starting out, and especially if you haven't had the best luck, you're trying to break in, it's very easy to kind of look at like what's going wrong. And it's the wrong approach.
Yep.
Because the moment you start saying that, like, I have nothing of value to add, the way the world works, and again, for those of you who know me, you've seen my show, I read a lot. I have a massive library. I've spent a lot of time reading about like how do people can become successful. The moment you start speaking this way, right? There's a reason why the First Amendment is the most important amendment in the United States, because in order to think, you have to speak, you have to articulate. When you start talking things like this and you start saying, I have no value to add, I don't have this, I don't have that, whether you believe in God or the universe, that's essentially what you're going to get, because now you're priming your brain subconsciously to manifest this reality that you have no value to bring, etc.
Yep.
And I'll go back to when I was first trying to break in, which, by the way, I struggled with this twice in my career of getting a job. First time when I was breaking in, and then second time, which is after I exited Mazor, I was a U.S. marketing manager. I was like, I'll be able to find a job. I was struggling. And the first few months when I was trying to interview, I was in a position of need, of desperation, of like, man, I hope somebody gives me a chance and everything. And that's not a position of power or leverage, right? And things changed, and this specific happened in 2015, and this is the advice I give to a lot of people, which is like, what if I told you that I'm a magical genie and that I spoke to God, and God said that you're going to land your dream job, like amazing pay, like you couldn't even believe that it's true. And, after 20 rejections, on the 21st, you're going to get it. So if you knew that, you would go to every interview was feeling so good and happy with a smile on your face. And it's like, great, I got another no. And so for me, what I reframed my mindset, again, when you start thinking the right way, visualizing the things that you want and taking action on it, that's the most important part about this is taking action. That's when things happen. So when I started interviewing, I convinced myself, I'm like, you know what? I'm a diamond in the rough. None of these people see my talent, and that's okay because they're average people. But someone's going to be smart enough to see the value that I'm going to bring, and they're going to invest me. And that's going to be the best decision they've made all year round. And I convinced myself of that. And so I'll share this quick story. Hopefully it inspires somebody on your show. When I finished my gig in Mazor, I was convinced, I was like, I want to be the best marketer in medtech.
Yep.
Period. Also because the field wasn't that competitive, I'll be honest. It still isn't. And so to do that, I was like, I have to move to Silicon Valley. I got to go to San Francisco because that's where a lot of investments are. Most competitive companies, the most talented people, smartest people, they're moving to San Francisco. Who's going to spend money to move a guy from Orlando, Florida, right? And so I started applying. I went out to a few interviews, and I had 2 interviews where I was like, oh man, they love me. I got this. And then for whatever reason, something happened, and I didn't get the job. I remember how devastated I was. But immediately, rather than sinking into the comfortable spot of like, oh, it's because I don't have enough experience, I don't have this, all the reasons, which by the way, don't waste your time, in my opinion, unless it's some feedback. Don't go looking for reasons why somebody didn't hire you, because then you're just going to focus on the things that you don't have. That's not a position of power. So then I started telling myself, I'm like, you know what? I know for a fact that I'm going to end up in San Francisco. Like I went to sleep thinking about it. I was like, it's going to happen. It's a matter of time. I even took a few flights out to SF just to walk around to feel like it was happening already.
Taste the dream.
Yeah, to make it as real as possible, right? Okay. And then I kept saying, I was like, I know it's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen. I kept telling myself that. I would tell my friends this, my family. I'm like, I don't know how it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And every single day I was taking action to figure that out. One day I had this random idea. Remember I told you about like, I'm extremely likable. I'm very creative. I take action. So I had this idea. I'm like, wait a minute. I want to go out and visit my sister in SF. Why don't I just book the flight and go for a whole week? And I'm just going to pretend I'm interviewing, and I'm just going to leverage that. So I messaged a bunch of people on LinkedIn to say, like, hiring managers. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be in SF. doing some interviews. I didn't have to say for who.
Yeah,
I made
exactly.
it up. And I was like, I'd love to just come by the office and meet you. So eventually one of them who had a job opening said, yeah, why don't you swing by? The moment that happened, I took that company's name and I was like, and I started messaging these other hiring managers, hey, I'm actually going to be in town interviewing, meeting somebody from this company, right? I'd love to meet up. So I leveraged that. And then literally out of nothing, I had 5 interviews with hiring managers.
Come on.
And what's the funny part is the job that I ended up getting was when I went to visit a CEO of a robotics company, just randomly, because I was like, hey, I'm in town. I'd love to just come by and meet you. I was trying to just increase my chances.
Yeah.
I went by. He was very impressed with our conversation. He's like, hey, why don't you come by the office and meet the team? And, some of the things we talked about, like about marketing and everything, do you want to talk to the team? I'm like, I love that. So I went back, had a presentation. Lo and behold, within 48 hours, I had an offer letter for a job that did not exist at a company. And I got hired, and they gave me a 10 grand signing bonus to move me out to SF.
Yep.
It was unreal.
Yep.
But the reason why I say this is that these are the things that happen when the moment you start focusing on the things that you have, saying that you have a lot of value, even if you know nothing, you can say hey, I'm extremely coachable. I have a great mindset. I have a hardworking work ethic. Even though I know nothing about medical sales, someone's going to be lucky to hire me.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. And I want to say this, a couple things real quick. Lucky, but you flew out there, you messaged all the people, right?
Take action.
Yeah. So you put yourself in there. It is that one thing I tell people, where we're even at today, right? It's the crazy belief. What's living today, I saw 4 years ago. But when I started telling everybody, everyone told me I was crazy. But the reason I'm saying this is because I'll never forget when I talked to you about this, but I remember when there was a financial goal that was more, I wanted to make more in a month than I made all year. And I didn't think it would be possible, right? But the crazy part is I remember telling people I was going to do it. I remember telling people, but here's the thing. I remember every single time I'd say it, I have that little, you're a liar. You're a liar. But I kept believing that I would do it. And then one day, I'll never forget when I said it and that was gone. It was gone, and in 2 months I did it.
And here's the thing. Every person, because of our parents, our school, how we grew up and everything, has that voice in our head and it's ego.
Yep.
Your ego is the thing that wants details. It wants to know how much money you're going to make, your title, and all these things. It's the very first thing that turns on you, right? To say you know what, you were never good enough.
Let's play safe, yeah.
Yeah, and so this is why, as a practice, every single day, I'm big proponent of meditation. Prayer, I think, is even more powerful.
Yep.
The most important conversation you're going to have with somebody is the conversation you have with yourself.
Yep.
So the more you're able to speak to yourself like somebody you care about, right? I guarantee you a lot of the people who are listening right now, if they audit the way they talk to themselves, they would never talk like that to somebody they care about. And I always tell people, you need to talk to yourself the way that you would to somebody you deeply love and care about. And I think I can only speak from the point of view of a man. I think men are even more like this because from movies and shows, we feel like, oh, I got to be really hard on myself, beat myself up. Yeah. I think it's okay to have high expectations and to demand a lot of yourself. But you need to also be forgiving to yourself and love yourself. And look, for me, I'm a high performer. There are days, what was it, 2 days ago? My goal every day in life is to not only be a great entrepreneur, but to be a great husband, a great father, a great friend, great member of my community. That's really hard to do. You're not going to hit it every single day. So, the other day, I think I was just feeling, whatever. I was in the motions. Maybe I wasn't feeling lazy. Maybe it was the holiday season, whatever it was. I think it was 2:00 in the afternoon. And I was just there and I was like, man, I'm not getting much done. And so I was being kind of a lousy entrepreneur that day. And so what am I going to do? Am I going to sit down and beat myself up and really force it? I'm like, no, you know what? It's just not happening today. And that's okay. So I was I'm going to close my books up. I'm going to close the computer. I'm going to go be a great dad right now. Yep. So I want to spend time with my kid.
Oh, I love that.
So sometimes you have to give yourself a little grace and forgiveness in life.
There's that yin and yang, but to that point, I actually wrote, and it will be coming out here soon, but I wrote a whole thing about high performers always feel like we're failing. Because we have such high expectations. Because
the moment you achieve something, you're on to the next thing.
We already have the field goal post gets pushed back. That's number one. But number two, that you and I had this talk, and I also had this talk when I went to therapy, is this exact same thing of what you said. Man, I always told people, and hopefully this hits with a lot of younger guys, is I'd go to the gym and I would say I'm dealing with my demons, right? And then it was just me calling myself a stupid whatever I want to do so I can lift the weights, right?
I remember that, Jacob.
Yeah, so we would have it. And, I never forget one of the days you looked at me and you're like, man, you're angry. And we got to work through that. And so working through a lot of that, but the reason I'm saying that is it's the same thing. How do I show up for myself? Now I do give myself grace. Now I do say, hey, you can do this, buddy. Like now when I'm riding the bike and I'm like, I'm doing 600 calories on the assault bike today. When I'm doing it, I'm like, I get done. I'm like, man, that was rough, but good job.
And I'll tell you like an interesting exercise your audience can do is like, there's no subconsciously, there's not really much of a difference between becoming something and then pretending that you're already that person.
Come on.
Right?
Yep.
So you might as well pretend from now. And so, for example, I don't want to share mine, but like if your goal is to be a medical sales rep, instead of saying, one day I'm going to be a medical sales rep, one day you just be like, I am a medical sales rep.
Yep.
I have this amazing job. Like just play pretend, because eventually you just slowly become that person.
Yep.
Right. And the other thing is like, I've been studying these things for many, many years, and even I haven't perfected it. But a lot of times the things that we want are kind of byproducts. And we talked about this as entrepreneurs, is that as an entrepreneur, the first thing you set your eyes on is like a number, right? And you chase that number. And then you realize like, that's actually the wrong way to do it. The number is a byproduct of something else. And the byproduct is something that is usually not quantitative, it's more qualitative. E.g., I'm going to build a amazing business that helps thousands of people break into medical device sales. I'm going to make people happy, all these things, blah. And then the byproduct is like the revenue that you're doing now, right? And I think that the more people spend time trying to understand these things about like what makes people successful. Real quick, we're in college football season. A microcosm of life is sports. I love sports for that reason. And so if you look at Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, or like another example of one is like Conor McGregor. Before they were champions, they talked about being a champion, like as if they were already that person. Conor McGregor was famous for this, where he's like, I'm like the 2-time champ. I'm the, and some people even correct, like, you're not the champion. He's like, no, I am. And it's not something that's ego driven. So like when you think about Kobe Bryant, when Kobe Bryant talks about championships and winning and everything, he doesn't get like all emotional and passionate, like, oh, I'm going to be a champion. Blah. It's like very, very like calm, subtle, confident energy. And sometimes that's what you need.
I love that, man. And I actually want to touch base on something that you said earlier too, is stepping into it. Because when you believe in it, like you said, it's the byproduct of it. But one thing you also said that I really want to just touch base that I think carries over really well is being okay with not being the right person for the wrong company. Right. And so what I mean by that is just
100%.
when you're trying to be you, right? Like, just so you guys know, I went through 14 different interview processes when I was trying to break in originally. And I would end it with final runs. I said, hey, I can't wait to be a part of your company. I can't wait to make an impact. But if you don't choose me, that's okay, because someone else will, and I will make them very happy. And it was that silent confidence. I wasn't ever being cocky, but it's like, I truly believed, and just so you guys know, I told people I would come in and perform. And the first thing I did was come in and perform, because I believed, and this is why. Not because I was talented or anything. I knew I was willing to work 14-hour days like I was doing in fitness and just learn and work harder than people. And I knew that about myself. And so just so you guys know, I say that to our team now and our members. Everyone asks, Jacob, how do you get people hired at $100,000+? Well, a couple things. Number one, we only go for companies that are actually going to pay our value. For $60K, like I see all these ortho ones that will come and they'll say certain things to us. And I'm like, you're the same managers or VPs or people hiring people for $52,000 and having them work 100 hours and can't figure out why your organization isn't profiting because you have such high turnover. But for us, the reason I'm saying that is we teach our people, it's no different than dating or marriage. You don't marry every single person you date. You probably didn't marry the first person you ever dated ever. It's going to probably take time. And guess what? You're never going to be the right fit for the wrong human being. And so it's knowing who you are, being confident. And guess what? When someone turns you down, I always looked at this and believing in God, that wasn't where they want me. Because just to share my story real quick so you guys can feel it, first job offer was with Zimmer, $65,000, moved to Atlanta. And for me at that time, I was like, no, I don't believe that's the right fit. I had 3 other companies, Johnson & Johnson, I had Stryker, and I had Medtronic. And I just was like, I'm going to pass on it. Thank you so much. I had tried so hard. I passed on that associate job to go in. I knew I felt where it was the right way, but I had lost 14 other interview processes to that. And I just knew it was the right where I was supposed to be. I then got 3 job offers within 24 hours of each other. But what I want you all to hear is I ended up taking a full line rep role, not an associate, a full line rep role at over 6 figures starting out with Medtronic, the largest med device company, which you could all say probably helped my career a lot being at that company and performing. When I got a no, yeah, it always stinks, but I never was like, my life's over. It was, that wasn't where God wanted me at this moment.
Yeah.
And that's what I would just encourage you guys is like, if you're going through it, because a lot of the people we've talked to, they've been ghosted. They haven't got jobs. That's okay. It's because I can just sit here and tell you, we talk to our members about this. Some of the worst advice we actually ever get is from hiring managers because they actually don't know what they're looking for. The best is we've even had hiring managers tell people to go back to OT school and get $100,000 of loans to go make 80K. Like it's hilarious. But the reason I'm just saying this to everyone is just understand you're not trying to be the right person for the wrong team, because our people who get hired at six figures, like right now when I say JC, they're texting them and being like, man, you crushed it. We're so excited to have you part of the team. This is awesome. And it's a great fit for both parties. And again, last piece of it is of like, we have nurses and people who always come in at over six figures. We always say, well, if you're already making close to 80, 90, 100, it doesn't make sense for you to go take a job at 50, 60K because you could just stay at your current role and make more money and not put yourself in a financial bad spot. And so it's just always making sure that you know the confidence in yourself, not being cocky, but confidence of, hey, I know I can perform. I can go do this. I may not know everything, but I do believe in one thing, and this is the most important. I believe in myself. I believe in myself that I'll do the action, I'll do the work that it will require to figure it out. And I just want to put that out there for people because we'll go into the interview section here in a second with you. But that's one of the biggest things is people are always just trying to shoot from the hip and just see who will ever take them. And I always say this to our members. That's the equivalent of saying you go out on a date with someone. They're like, so why'd you choose to go out on a date with me? And you're like, you're the only one who said yes. It doesn't make them feel special.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, again, like I one of the other beliefs that I have is that I don't believe in anything that doesn't give me power.
Yeah.
I just don't. I just don't. So like, and it's sometimes it's kind of interesting, like like I'll lose a deal. It could be that my pricing was too high or like something, and I'll just be like, no, it's just the wrong company.
Well, just so you know, and it's never too high because the right people will see your value.
Yeah, it's never. Yeah, exactly.
And the people whoever will nickel and dime. I just say this to everyone in the program because people will see the success, and I'm like, you can't go anywhere else and see hundreds, and they'll be like, oh, and I make sure everyone knows we're not the Honda Accord, we're the Lamborghini because of the relationships, all the stuff that we give to people. If someone's like, oh, that's expensive, it's like, well, no, that's just a pre-thought that you had that we shouldn't be as much. But you actually, again, just so you all know in the most respectful manner, every person who says that has never made $100,000, $150,000. So they don't actually know what value is. They just are living in a poor person mindset of, I wanted it cheaper. And so when we're talking about customers and acquisition and everything, everybody knows if I have to have someone nickel and dime me, they're going to be my worst customer and they're going to cause me the most amount of headache and work. But the best customers will be like, oh, great, here. They won't even ask for the price because they know the value and they trust it. And so I always just put that out there, whether you're in this, because it's no different than when you're in med device sales. If I have a doctor who's nickel and dime and everything, AKA every surgeon that goes to a surgery center who I've watched tell me that you have to live off of ramen noodles as they drive their $300,000 sports car, they're not the right fit and they don't have to be the right fit. So I just wanted to put that out there because for you, yeah, it doesn't give you power, but I've learned really fast, I'm not a yes for a lot of people, and that's okay. But the people we're the yes for, it's the best.
Yeah, and I think, look, I want to be empathetic to like the people who are trying to break in because they're just trying to get a break.
Yep.
But again, at the end of the day, if you step back and think about it, like if you get rejected from a job, looking at every reason why you didn't get the job is, in my opinion, is not going to give you any power.
No.
And some recruiters are going to disagree with me, but I'm like, okay, so like, what's the alternative? It's like, okay, you don't have enough experience. What good is it for you to sort of, like accept that belief? It doesn't give you power, and you can't go buy experience.
Well, and it's not true. Like,
yeah, and it's not. It isn't. That's the other thing. It's not true. Yeah. I can tell you right now that the numbers that people put, like you need 2 years of experience, everything is like made up. It doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, and I'll give you a great example. I can very easily say on the commercial side, I'm probably one of the best in marketing in this space. Like I can put my digital skills against anybody. It doesn't matter, especially if they're at a strategic, by the way, because they're not good at that. But when I look at roles and they say like, okay, you need, 3, like I'll give you an example. When I was at Mazor Robotics, I was a US marketing manager for almost, I think 2.5 or 3 years. And so in those 2.5 to 3 years, I personally led and managed like I think over 25 different conferences. Like so I did so much in those 2.5 years. And so a recruiter told me, they're like, oh, for this role you applied, you know, you have 2.5 years. They really wanted 3 years. I'm like, what difference is 6 months going to make?
Yep.
And so I was able to, and I accomplished more in those 2.5 years within, you know, more than a lot of people did within 5 or 6 years. And I did things that people weren't, you know.
Come on.
And so the most important thing is that, like, you have to push back. And like, there's certain companies that I apply to that reject me. And I'm like, okay, well, these people are just dumb. Like, they're literally looking at a sheet of paper and not looking at the candidate in front of them.
Bam.
You know, and the other thing I would say is that for people who are applying, you have to, what you really want to do is this, is that no one's going to hire you for your experience or anything. You really want to go to a place where the hiring manager is smart enough to look at you and see who you could be for that company
Potential.
a year from now.
Yep.
You know?
You're dead on. And just so you know, I do want to just touch on this because first off, we work with all these recruiters who give horrible advice and they say you need more experience. I will sit here and tell you every person we get hired doesn't have the experience. We've helped over 2,000 people break in. So
if you're applying for entry-level roles, you're not going to technically have experience.
No, and just so you know, and then just so you guys know, this is the most exciting. We haven't really announced it, but we'll put a little bit out there. I work with med device companies, and we're working on a lot of fun, exciting things of them wanting to use our candidates because they see the people we have, they see how I coach, all the stuff. And let me sit here and tell you, every call I've gotten on in the last 2 weeks with multiple CEOs, VPs of sales, and VP of marketing, the first thing I say is if you're going to tell me you need a 4-year degree, you need 2 years of experience from an ADP or a med device company, don't use us, don't work with us, because let me tell you why. Tell me how the 4-year degree person who's been partying and cheating on tests is a better salesperson than the 18-year-old who is doing door-to-door sales. You can't. And then they'll tell me, oh, but my worst people are the masters because they're all 24 to 28, 30-year-olds who think they deserve to make them as much money because they have this education, but they've never done a sales call and they have no value to add when it comes to the actual sales position they're applying for.
And I want to make a comment about this as well, is that, like, regardless, like, whether you went to college or you didn't, everybody needs to adopt sort of like a lifelong student mentality, which means like you have to constantly be not only studying, like, it's not enough just to buy books. You have to spend your own money. Like, look, I'm well into my career. I have my own business. Every year, I think right now, because it's the end of the year, we're calculating, I think I spend close to 25 or 30K just this year alone on my own personal development, whether it's through coaching, going to conferences, programs. God knows how many books I've purchased and read. And so that just has to be part of what you do. And I think that's something that is not spoken enough in this industry, which is why I think there's a lot of opportunities to really stand out.
And that's why people never grow. So just so you guys know, we do that and more on our self-development and what I've done for our company, coaching, mentorships, programs, everything. That's why it's easy for me to sell a program because I'm not even giving you guys it for a tenth of what I've paid for certain coaching. And the reason I say that is that's why when anybody says anything to me, it's like, great, but you're not willing to invest $50,000 to go get your business to be better. But I am. And the reason I just say that, I don't say that as a cocky thing. I say is why I get so excited for each and every one of you is because most individuals will never invest $1,000 on themselves to become better, get more skills, make themselves more valuable to a company or to even have more assets to offer somebody. And so that's why the first thing when people join us, I say, congratulations, you're in the top 1% because you actually invested in yourself, which is why we get people hired at so much higher than what people who won't. And so that's that lifelong. Going back to me talking with all these med device companies, it's not the background, it's the person. Who's the jockey? Can they show up early? Are they a self-starter? Do they have all the intangibles?
And let me touch on that for a second, which is like people want to know how to be successful. If you go to my show, I have interviews with VPs of sales and people who are the upper echelon of this industry. Actually, next year, I'm releasing a series called the US Surgical Series. For many of those, they don't even know what that company is. You know, Intuitive Surgical today is one of the most successful companies.
They're great.
Yeah, they're $192 billion market cap. That, you know, they're $50 billion more than Lockheed Martin. A lot of the people from the early days of Intuitive came out of this one company called US Surgical. US Surgical is a wildly successful company that got acquired. And so I'm actually interviewing old executives and leaders from that time.
Come on.
But also to learn about their mindset about how to be successful. So I say this is that you can go and listen to the most influential people in our industry to learn about how do they think and how do they do things and just do it yourself. It's not that complicated.
No.
And so even today, there's a lot of like supposedly successful reps that when I look at their plan and the way they do things, they're actually not that good, to be honest with you. And so I think it's really important to, again, constantly be learning, like, what do the top of the top, the best of the best do, and how do they execute, how do they live life, how do they do things.
This is the talk we have with our people. When I came in, I took the lowest performing territory. And then when I went to Innovis, I went to a market that didn't exist. I was one of the first 3 people, and it was $0. And we brought it to the top 10. The reason I'm sitting here telling you is you guys will get on LinkedIn and there's President Club winners who walked into a territory that were performing at 110%.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a lot of President's Club winners where like they really didn't do anything. I mean, it's really easy to be President's Club when you have like a KOL in your back pocket and they're just 90% of their cases, they use your product. And like, you didn't do anything.
Yeah, and that's what we always say is because whether you are there
that's
or not.
That's not all President's Club winners.
No, 100%.
But there's plenty of them that are like that.
And this is the thing, because again, medical device sales, and it's why we have it and why we get a lot of comments and stuff, it's a very egotistical world, right? It's ego and, oh, I'm the best. And I'm just saying this is there's a lot of reps and managers, whoever, that are President Club winners that actually, if they went to another company, want to be President Club winners because they're there because the doctor uses them.
I know those people. There's a lot of people that in the robotics world that, you know, because they spent time at Intuitive, it was thought like, oh, these people are going to be really successful. And like more than half of them were not. They just failed because, you know, it takes a certain type of person to go into a brand new market with a very new and disruptive and expensive technology with not a lot of clinical data on it and find a way to sell it.
Yep.
You know, it's just like, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy at all. For those who are trying to break in, like if you think breaking in is really hard, like wait till you actually have a sales job and you're trying to drive the adoption of a new product. Like, you know, so if you can't hack the process of like being patient and really giving it your all and like going 9 months, 12 months and not getting a break, this is the wrong field for you.
And that's even the talk I had with the CEO yesterday. It was a 55-minute phone call. And the reason I'm saying that to you guys is that was the whole conversation. He's like, I don't want someone from a Medtronic or Intuitive where it doesn't matter who you slot in. That thing's been around for 10 years. It's already got a market. It's already established.
Well, not just that, but it helps when you have the brand of Stryker or Medtronic behind you as well. And again, not to take anything away from those people, but again, a lot easier.
There's no shade on that. But the reason I will just say this is because, again, some people like the bigger companies, some like the smaller, but I'll sit here and say he's like, we don't even want them because we already know if we come and put them into bringing a new product to market, you can't say I'm with Stryker and get into every hospital now and have doctors use you.
Yeah, and again, like also, again, I'm going to comment on that as well, which is like, I think it's also wrong for hiring managers to also say like, I don't want a Stryker or Medtronic, because then it's making all these assumptions and not looking at the individual, because there are people that I know who work at really large med device companies where I can take them and plug them into a brand new startup with nothing and they'll be successful. Right?
That was me.
Medtronic. You started Medtronic.
Medtronic, and then went to Innovis and took 0 to 7. Yeah.
So again, and the other thing I would say is like the mistake that people make is that once they get into a company, they stop marketing themselves. This is why I tell people. So again, shameless plug, go to omnicreator.club. You can use the code, I think, podcasts, Omni with the word O, and start learning about how to use software to create some content, put it out there on LinkedIn so that you look good to your company. You're like, oh, so-and-so is making posts about their customers, about our product, about the market, all these things, and helping with marketing. But then some other companies are going to be like, man, we should just hire that person.
So I do want to make a fun little note. Self-branding. Self-branding is always in. People will be like, oh, Jacob, why would you be posting all this stuff when I was at Medtronic or Innovis or wherever? Because it wasn't about
who else is going to talk about you?
and it's me. But here's the best part. You mentioned Axonics, right?
Yeah.
I talked to the VP of sales when I was looking to leave Medtronic. They told me I didn't have enough experience and I should hold off. Went to Innovis. We had a couple big deals. And 6 months later, I got a call saying your name's come up 4 times. You want a position. The reason I sit here, I stayed at Innovis. I was very happy. But the reason I'm sitting here saying that didn't come from my results of the back. It's people saw me on LinkedIn performing, seeing what Innovis was doing, all the stuff. And so it's the self-branding that I just put out there for you guys. I just hope that's helpful. Now, I really want to get into, you guys are probably like, oh, okay, we get it that we need to grow and all the stuff, but what actionable things can we do? And so this is where Omar,
I gave him a lot of actionable things. So hold on, I gave him a lot of actionable, but no, I know more tactical.
Well, because it's more tactical because here's the thing: we get the people who will be like, "Oh, you guys are just talking," and it's like when they're making $33,000 a year. What we just said, even though I want to be as nice to you as possible, it's going. They're like, just tell me what to do, and I say that because you all are in my DMs saying this all the time on our messages. So the reason I'm saying this is we'll go into, hey, you're getting ready for an actual interview, whether you're in the industry or you're about to be in the industry. Omar's pretty good at persuasion, has worked with a lot of big companies. Like, what is some of your advice? Because you also went to med school, which isn't easy to get into. What is some of your advice to someone who's new, who's like, I want to break into med device sales and I want to interview?
I'm going to give some context to this. So like, I think the greatest sale I ever made in my life was getting into medical school, because to get into medical school, first of all, it's like 0.01% of people get in. It's extremely competitive. So not only did I get into medical school, I got into an allopathic medical school, so an MD program in the United States, extremely hard. And I got a full scholarship, and I got pre-accepted. Pre-accepted means that you are so desirable that usually when they send, usually you interview in the fall, and then they send acceptances out in the spring, so the next year. But if you get pre-accepted, you get an offer letter in the fall to commit early. Okay, so I got all of that, and I did not come from a good school. I came from UTEP. I had a pretty good GPA. I had like a 3.7, but my MCAT score was not good. I took it 3 times. I didn't, But so how did that happen? I genuinely believe that if I owned and controlled the interview process, that was the one thing that I had control of. Okay, how do you control the interview process? Let's start with how not to control the interview process. This is the dumb thing to do, in my opinion. Yes, when you interview for a company, you should absolutely go read about the company's mission, the vision. If it's for a very specific product, read the clinical papers, like all the obvious things that Jacob teaches you in his program. But the dumb thing to do is to do that like you're studying for a test and say, I'm going to walk in and sit back and play double jeopardy and hope they ask me the right question. It's very, very stupid to do. And even as confident as I am, as experienced as I am and everything, I wouldn't do that to myself. So the right thing to do is to control it from the very beginning. How do you control it from the very beginning? What's the one question that every single interview is going to ask you? No matter how robotic they are, if they're following a script, they're always going to ask you the same question first and foremost. Like, tell me a little about yourself. They're going to ask that question. That's the one time you have control. Okay. So how do you control that question? Well, what you come up with is a belief statement about yourself. Okay. And this can go up on your LinkedIn as well in your about section, but this is about me statement. 5 things about you, where you talk about where you grew up, where you're from, a little bit about background, some of your hobbies, etc. But part of this, from a persuasion standpoint, is that you're sprinkling in things that highlight your character, your personality, your ability to do things. And again, like I'll ask the audience, if you went to an employer and said, "Hey, what's the perfect employee you want to hire?" What are they going to say? They're going to say, "Oh, they got a great mindset, team player, positive mindset, hardworking, all these things." Those aren't skills, right? Those aren't skill sets. What are those? Those are personality traits, right? Those are things that are in your control, right? So to convey that, when you do like, tell me about yourself, but when I would interview as a rep, right, what I would say is like, hi, my name's Omar Khatib, grew up on the U.S.-Mexican border, first generation immigrant, dad's from Iraq, mom's from Turkey. I studied biology and chemistry in college. I was really interested in furthering my education. So not only did I did the honors program and got 30 hours, actually doubled the amount of work and got it 60 hours. I did research here. Then I went and did this. The point of this is that you're telling them about yourself, your background, your character, your values, maybe some other things. So like after I went to Mazor and I went to another company, I would say like, I spent time in Mazor Robotics as a marketing manager. We launched the first robotic spine platform, did this. So in this statement, which is about a minute long, you're telling them a few things about where you grew up, your values, your interests, etc. Some things about your personal or professional life, right? Sometimes I put in is like, for hobbies, like I'm a very big reader. I love reading. And so I read very broadly. I'm very interested in psychology and persuasion, a little bit of history, right? And the point of this is that you can confidently deliver this statement because not only do you know it, it's about you. Guarantee you, because you put so many different elements of the story in there, your background, your family, your values, your professional life, personal hobbies, etc. Something in there is going to get the interviewer's attention, where they can say, "Oh, like tell me about this," or they might say, "Oh, that's interesting. You played sports at this thing," or whatever it is. And then you have a conversation, right? And you have to practice this because now you spend time talking about yourself, right? And getting more comfortable. The interview is more comfortable. And then you have control. And then you don't let them ask the question. You don't do that and blah, blah, yeah, and you stop. You have to control the interview, in my opinion. And then you go to that person and say, "Hey, by the way, I'm sure we have some questions. I'll be able to ask questions. But just before you get started, I'm wondering, like, what made you come to this company, right? That's a good question to ask. Or, just out of curiosity, what are the main reasons why this role is being open? Like, what are the main problems this person has to have, right? So if you go into this interview with the mentality of like, I got this interview, I don't know if they're going to give me the opportunity or not. It's going to be a smart decision if they do. If they do, they're smart people like I thought. If not, they're stupid people and they don't see value, right? So you go with that mentality in, then you have a little bit more confidence to say, hey, like, I got some questions to ask. Like, we'll get to your questions. I got some questions. Because remember, I don't care even if you're starting out, you're also interviewing this company.
100%.
Right?
Come on.
And so that to me is the most valuable thing you can do to control an interview, because the whole purpose of an interview, on paper, you've checked out. The interview is just trying to see if you are qualitatively a fit, right? And so the best thing you can do is to generate some positive momentum, feel confident, right? And more importantly, find ways to shine. Because, for example, I wanted to highlight in my early interviews that I was extremely hardworking, that I'll go above and beyond, right? I wasn't going to leave it up to this interviewer to think I assumed every interviewer was an idiot and not going to ask me smart questions. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I need to make sure that this person knows this about me.
Yep.
So the tell me about yourself question at the beginning is the main way to control the interview. And again, once you start off on that foot, you generated some confidence, you eased in. And of course, they're going to ask you some questions that you need to stop and think. But at least you started off the interview on a strong position.
Yes. And that's so smart because a couple of things. A, we talk about this all the time, is many of the hiring managers aren't thinking. They got a lot of stuff and they just have like 6 questions they ask every same candidate. They're going to do it. And then they just decide, right? We also run into the problem if it's like an internal recruiter. They decide. Like, for example, there's been multiple times where the internal recruiter is like, we don't feel like you're a good fit, because that's the one place they have power, right? And then we talk to the hiring manager and then that candidate got X'd out and they got brought back in. So
yeah, and look, again, most people suck at hiring.
Yeah.
And interviewing. And so sometimes, like, you can have a bad interview and it's okay, do a post-mortem review, like, okay, what did I do wrong? There's nothing wrong with doing that, by the way. Do a post-mortem. But like, sometimes the people you interview, like, they ask stupid things. Like, I'll never forget, like, I was interviewing at Nevro a long time ago for a marketing position. This is when I was trying to move out to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Actually, I've never told this story. Their CEO at the time, or somebody, really believed that the marketing team has to, they have to all have MBAs and they have to come out of Penn, which is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. This is like royally stupid. And I'm at a position in my life where I can actually call this out. This is so stupid. So stupid, okay? And so one of these people was like a former engineer, and so we're sitting down and talking, and then he asked me this question, which is the Moneyball question, which is, and I'm going to explain. Can I talk through this real quick? It is an interesting question, but it was a stupid question for this interview. Yeah. Okay, I'm interviewing for a marketing position. Okay. He asked me a question about statistics, okay? Stupid. The question is, okay, you have 3 doors, okay? Behind each door is a goat, and one of the doors is, $1 million, okay? Which door do you choose? Door 1, 2, or 3? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to choose door 2, okay? So the interviewer's like, okay, $1 million is not behind door number 1, okay? So it's either behind door number 2 or door number 3. Okay, so I chose number 2. He's like, which door do you think it's behind then? Do you stick with door number 2 or do you switch to door number 3? Okay, and it's a trick question. You always switch, because essentially it's a statistical thing. Each door has a 1/3 chance or a 33% chance that the money's behind there. You pick one door. Okay, they eliminate one of those doors. And so the 1/3 chance I went to the other door. So the other door has a 2/3 chance that it's behind there. Your door that you currently have is a 1/3. So if you run this as statistical analysis and you do this 100 times and you switch, 98 or 99 times when you switch, you choose right. Okay, that was a question. I got it wrong. Okay, and I remember after that interview, like, I beat myself. I'm like, man, why didn't I know that? Everything. And then I just realized, I'm like, that's a stupid question. What the hell does that tell you about me? Like, okay.
Does that make you market better?
No, it doesn't make you market better. And then someone could argue, it's like, oh, well, this guy wanted to see, like, would you get frustrated about a situation? Would you get this or that? I'm like, in the microcosm of this little interview and this manufactured question is going to tell them all these things. It's stupid. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. And again, it's the dumb, like I haven't talked about that story in so long, but it's just like so stupid. And the reason I mention this is because there's so many smart people out there who think they have like a question or two they can ask somebody, right? And just purely on that, evaluate them. And there's some questions you can't, like open-ended questions. Dr. Dre has a great question, actually.
Yeah.
Dr. Dre, when he interviews like artists and stuff, his question is, what's a project you worked on for numerous hours, like more than I think 8 hours or something, or a project where you like didn't eat, didn't sleep? What's the longest you ever worked, and what were you working on? That's an interesting question.
Yep.
Right? But like these canned questions, like don't feel bad about that. Like I didn't win the double Jeopardy question of like knowing the answer to that. I know that answer now though.
Yeah.
So
my head was hurting while you were saying it. So.
Yeah, dude. Like I mean, so just know that in this space, especially sometimes when you talk to like these larger companies, like, you deal with people with such huge egos. And it's and at the end of the day, don't get angry about it. As jazzed up as I got about that. But like at the end of the day, just be like, you know what? Like this person just has their own way of seeing things. Yeah. They want to hire somebody like themselves, not the right place. And thank God I didn't go to that company too.
Yeah. Well, I always just say this to our team and our members all the time, right? Like the biggest thing for our people is so many people will put so much pressure on an interview. Right? Especially if they've never been in an interview or they really want this job. Like what happens all the time, they'll find a company such as a Medtronic or Jane, they've researched and they just love it, right? And now they're in it and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. And then I always
terrible mistake.
Exactly.
Can I touch on that?
Yeah.
Another mistake. This is life advice. The way the world works, the more excess potential or desire you put on something, the world, from a physics standpoint, does not work that way. And so when you put extra desire on something, the way that it equalizes out is it becomes harder to get.
Yep.
And so the more you want something, the more likely you're just not going to get it. Yep. And I've seen this in my personal and professional life. So the moment you feel a little bit of desire for something, you need to immediately extinguish that. I'm going to use myself. Currently, there's a large Fortune 100 company that is in a negotiation with me about a project, okay? The moment this happened, I felt my desire go up where I'm like, oh, I really want this. The moment that happened, I was like, I need to immediately extinguish the fact that I really want this. So what did I do? I took that exact same deal and I went and pitched it to like 10 other companies that are in the Fortune 500. And so now I have like 3 or 4 other companies in the pipeline for that. So now that one company, like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And sometimes, okay, for interviews, it's like, okay, well, Omar, what happens if I have an interview with Johnson & Johnson? I can't just go and get other interviews. Go talk to other people, even if you have to somehow make belief in your head, like, hey, I'm not going to get this one job because I don't want it. Like, you need to immediately, like, the person who wants it the most is going to lose.
Bam.
Professional and personal life advice there.
Yeah, we talk about this. It's always about relationships, right? If you're the one being like, hey, baby, when are you coming over?
Nobody wants needy.
No.
Like, you can, even with me on my own show, like, there was I'll never forget this. There was like an investor that I really respected a lot. I mean, I still respect them. I wanted to have on my show. But then the moment that like I talked to them and they kind of were like, oh, I've been wanting to be on your show for so long and blah, blah, blah. Like, and they kind of became like very needy. I'm like, oh, I'm like, all right.
Bad taste.
So just like, don't be needy. Nobody wants a needy person. When you hire somebody, you want to feel like you're hiring, like you're lucky to hire this person, not that you're doing this person a favor.
Yeah. And I just want to
don't go cap in hand.
Well, and I want to speak to that real quick because it all comes down to one thing. It comes down to confidence, right? It goes into confidence. And I talk to people about this in our program all the time, and we really make sure you really understand it, right? I've been fortunate enough to get into occupational therapy school where thousands of people apply and they only accept 25, right? I got 3 to go there. And then I got into med device sales and all the stuff, and people always ask. And it was always me realizing, because especially when you come from nothing and broke and poor and all the stuff, when you come from it,
these are bad mental or hard mental frames to break out of.
They're hard to break out of. But what I was able to do with that same frame, though, is I already don't have it. And what I was able to understand is if I got this, yeah, things would be great. But if they say no to me, Like I remember one of the OT programs, it was actually here in Arizona. I came here and interviewed, and I went, and there was a girl having a mental breakdown right before we're actually going into the interview because she's like, oh my God, if I don't get this, my next year, and I looked at her and I was like, you want to just chill? And I was like, and then I just said this, like we're candidates to going against each other. And I just said, and I said, all right, you don't get this job. What do you keep doing? Or you don't get into school. What do you keep doing? What you're currently doing for another year, and then you reapply next year. And it always made sense to me. And so that's why I always got it, because I didn't care. But it's the same thing. I just want to say this to jobs. Hey, you choose me, great. You don't, some other company's going to do it. It might take a little more longer time.
And I think people, I used to think it was a loser's mentality to have a plan B. In a funny way, it's actually a good idea to have plan B. And the reason why I say that is not because you're going to do the plan B, but because the moment you can accept that, like, okay, if this does not happen, here's the plan B, or here's what happens instead, and you're like, I'm okay with that. You've not only reduced desire, but you removed fear. You don't, in sports, you don't win championships based on fear. We've always heard that's the saying of like, a team who lost, they lost not because they were playing to win, they were playing not to lose.
To lose, yeah.
You don't win in life playing not to lose.
Yeah.
And again, like, I think, and this is an ongoing thing. So a lot of your audience needs to do some self-work to figure out, like, what am I most afraid of? Why am I most afraid of that? What makes me angry? What do I really want? And why do I want those things? Yeah. And a lot of times, like, it's funny is like when you get to a certain point in life professionally that you can meet the people you want to meet, afford the things that you want to afford and stuff, then you realize, like, man, a lot of the things that I wanted to buy were just to impress people that I never liked to begin with. Yep. You just realize, like, oh, like, I really don't want those things. And I went through this myself. When I started off in my career, I was like, oh, I want to be a CEO. No, I want to be like the VP of marketing. And then, like, more and more, I'm like, well, why do I want that? I'm like, oh, it's just like, I just want, like, this title for, like,
pat on the back.
Yeah, and respect and everything. And then I just kind of realized, I actually don't want that. And some people want that. There's nothing wrong with that.
And there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah. That's your thing.
But the point is, like, I think it's important to ask yourself to understand, like, do I really want this? Or because I see other people wanting it? Yeah. And that's the thing. A lot of people want something because somebody else wants it, and then you assign value. It was never your own idea.
Yeah. No, and then one thing I can just say this as a young person who's watching that, I saw other people and I knew sometimes I wanted, but I wanted to always be like, but I want to taste it. I want to taste it and know for sure that I don't want it, right? Yeah. Like there's that piece of it, so that can keep you hungry and driven. The one thing I do want to just go back onto the confidence real quick is, like, whether it's a company that you're like, hey, you take me, you don't take me, I'm going to be okay. I just give you guys that advice because it's no different than a deal. For example, every big PO I got, when I was like pushing, never happens. The moment I was like, hey, and then I ghosted them for a little bit because I'm like, hey, and then like they'll reach out, or I reach back out and be like, hey, sorry, I'm working on 6 other deals, or I'm with these other companies. Let them know that you're not my only customer. It shows a big thing. And just life advice to people who are out dating, it's the same thing. I always make the joke inside of our program. If someone's like, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do that? Hey, can you, and you're like, how high can I jump? How fast can I be there? Eventually that person's gonna be like, doesn't this person ever have anything else going on and stick up for themselves? Because I'll sit here and tell you, like, to all the guys out there, just a piece of advice. There's been times in the dating world, because I was a single guy for a long time, it's like, hey, I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to go on another date. And I'm like, okay, cool. Sounds good. Because I always say this, when you're confident enough with yourself, I know what I bring to the table, right? And that takes a lot. I'll just say this, it takes a lot of self-work to get that point. But once you understand what you bring to a table, whether it's a relationship, professionally, whatever it is, they want to be a part of it, great. They don't want to, great. But the reason I'm sitting here telling that to everybody listening right now is because when you get yourself to a point where you're like, no, I'm good, and I know what I bring to the table, and I know what I can value, and what I can bring to an organization, you will watch things change because you carry yourself different, instead of being like, please take me, please take an interview. Oh my God, I have to have this job. And then going back to what you were just saying in that mindset, this is the one thing I want everyone to hear from that mind frame of, I also understood, whether it's dating, whether it's in a job search, whether it's anything. If I already don't have it, which was the mindset that's always helped me have success, I always looked at myself. I liked my life already. I wanted something better, but even if you're in a position, because there was places and times I maybe wasn't where I wanted to be, I was like, it's actually not that bad because I have some money. I'm not homeless. I'm not in a really bad spot. I do have people in my life that love me. It's just goals I have. But when I could actually understand and really look from the external in and be like, my life's really not that bad. Yeah. I just want a bigger drive for myself. Then it takes all this, because everybody who's worried about the next job, next relation, whatever it was, oh my gosh, I have to have it. You're coming from the place of lack and you're wishing you had it. But when you actually come from the place of like, hey, whether I get this or not, this could enhance my life. But if it doesn't enhance my life, guess what? My life's actually not that bad, and there'll be something else that comes from it.
Yeah, and look, like I'll give like really good business development advice, but this is good life advice, which is if you think about like how a company does something, you have like 3 tiers. At the very top, it's like a business result. So we want to hit $100 million in sales this year. Okay. Below that business result, you can say they're business objectives. So to hit the $100 million, we have to have 50 deals in pipeline at a 25% conversion rate, blah, blah, blah. Like, those are the more quantitative things that you need to do. But below that, right? So again, we have the result, we have the objectives to hit the result. Under that is activity. The only thing you have control of as a salesperson is the activity, the thing you choose to do every single day. Because then if you just do those things, then technically, right, you'll be able to hit those objectives that get you the results. So that being said, let's say your goal is like you want to hit President's Club and do X amount in your territory. Yes, you should do the math. Always do the math to figure out like what does that technically take.
Yeah, work it backwards.
Yeah, but then at the end of the day, all you can really do is focus on activity, and a lot of activity is just like driving a lot of value, right? And working hard, being reliable, all these things. And then you kind of like leave it to the world, the universe, for these things to kind of fall into place because you don't control a lot of variables. Yep. And I think for a lot of things in life, look, let me reverse engineer this to a completely different thing. I want to get married, okay? So the goal is I want to meet like my life partner, okay? To meet my life partner, maybe I need to meet like 100 people, these things, blah, 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 blah. Well, then underneath those activities, it's like, okay, here's the things that I got to do. I got to, find ways to dress better. I should work out every single day. Every single day, I want to be like a man or woman of God, or I want to be spiritual, whatever. So I got to meditate or pray, etc. I need to be well learned. I need to do this. I need to do that. Every weekend, I'm going to go out and meet. So when you focus just on the things that you have control of and take action, this is the goal and the big secret of life. Nothing happens unless you take action.
Yep.
And you bring the best version of yourself to those activities with a very positive mindset, with a creative mindset, and you've brainwashed yourself to think that the chips are stacked in my favor. I'm lucky. This is going to happen. And then you just say, at some point in the future, it'll happen. Done. Right? And I think to make it even more interesting is there's one of the great champions in the UFC was Khabib Nurmagomedov. Yep. And he had a prayer before he was champion. And his prayer was, if it's in God's will that I should be champion, if becoming champion will make me a better person, may God give that to me. But if it's not going to make me a better person, if it's not going to be good for my family and everything, may I never get it. Yeah. And then from there, he just focused on working, and if, lo and behold, became like one of the great champions, right? So it's the theme here for everybody is that like focus with a positive and creative mindset on just taking action every day, the things that you have control of, reduce your desire on things. Always believe that the chips are stacked in your favor. And even when terrible things happen, yep, if you brainwash yourself enough to believe that everything happens for a reason, for good, you can take any angle about from a very terrible, and like, look, I've worked and mentored you for many years. You've had some terrible things that happened to you in your business. Yeah. But every single time you made a different perception or told yourself a different story that empowered you, right? Yep. Like at the end of the day, like I can't stress enough for your audience, don't believe in things that don't give you power.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like again, like the most common thing is like, you don't have experience. Yes. Okay. Sure. Okay. In some ways that's factual, but is it true? Right? There's a difference between a fact and a truth.
Bam.
Like, come on. Like I could, so factually, okay. Factually, I've never been the CEO of a Fortune 100 company. Right? That's factually. But the truth is like, I have been. Like, I've read plenty of like reports. I've managed these kind of people. I have this experience because I have, like, so you can, maybe that's not the best example. Like running a Fortune 100 company, yeah, I don't think is something I want to do.
Yeah.
But my point is that you can develop your own truth and say, okay, factually, I have no experience in medical sales. But the truth is, I have a lot of experience. I know how to work hard. I worked on a farm.
Yep.
I know how to be disciplined. I know how to be very creative in solving problems when I don't know something. I know how to go and read and
build
get better.
relationships, all this stuff.
And so, like, you know, at the end of the day, the world is perception. Like, that's reality.
Yeah, and just one thing I just want to touch on when you say, we've had some life stuff happen and things in the business happen. And always what has helped me is, again, I always believe everything happens for a reason, but one of the biggest changes in my life, especially in the last 24 months, was when something maybe challenging, I would say, happens, is what am I supposed to learn from this? What is this developing me to become? Because I have always believed is like, you know, Matthew McConaughey, you know, who's my hero, me in 5 years, right? And then 5 years later.
Chasing me, yeah.
And then he says it's going to be in another 5 years. And the reason I just say that is, for me, that's how I always think about it, is like, I can sit here and tell you the most fun is sitting here today with you and being like, hey, I remember the first time you and I got on a call, and the amount of maturity I've had happen in my life. It's been a journey, but it's always like, even 12 months ago, if I look at it, I was still working for Innovis, running this company on the side, doing it. And then jumping 8 months ago, full time in this, I've learned so much. I've matured so much. I've got employees that let go of employees, like all the stuff that I never would have got in my past experiences.
Exactly. And I'm going to point something out again. I don't want to reveal too much, but like, when you first started your business, you were so focused on chasing a revenue goal, which is what I think every entrepreneur does. And you were like, you had like a death grip on it.
Yeah.
And the moment you let that go, kind of magically, your business, like, I don't know, triple, quadruple in revenue. It was insane within a year. And why did that happen? It didn't happen by accident, but because like you reduced the desire and this like chokehold you had on it. You kind of let it go and you focused on the activities that were going to bring the most value.
Yep.
And then the byproduct is that. Same thing with your audience, which is like, sometimes you have to release this chokehold of like, I got to break into medical device sales and say, okay, me breaking into medical device sales is going to be a byproduct of the activities I do to get interviews, to put myself in the best position. And once I'm in that best position, what can I do now that'll demonstrate that I'm a great person to have on the team? Maybe I should listen to Omar's State of MedTech podcast and listen to these episodes with hiring managers and CEOs and everything. So I learned, how do they talk? How do they ask questions? How do they think about things? Maybe I should read some books on sales and psychology, right? Maybe I should develop myself into this well-rounded person. Maybe I should do all these things so like when I enter a room, the level of confidence I have about myself, you can feel it without me even talking, right? And then when you do that, that's when things sort of happen as a byproduct. A lot of times the problem is, I think we focus on things that we make things that are goals, when really those goals have to be byproducts of something else.
You're 100%. And that's the biggest thing. They actually, just to give you a little tip for entrepreneurship or anybody, even in sales, before you can go make 200 grand, you have to believe you can make 200 grand and become the person who would make 200 grand.
Yeah.
Right?
And ask the question, like, what would it look like? Like, who would I have to become to be paid $200,000?
Exactly. And that's the thing. Cause, there's a great quote. And, I can't remember if it's Chris Williamson's or Alex Hormozi. It's like, confidence doesn't come from screaming affirmations at yourself in the mirror, right? Saying I'm worth 200,000, I'm worth, and you just scream it. It doesn't do anything. But you actually going and becoming a person who learns a skill, how to sell, how to communicate, how to make yourself desirable. It goes such a far way. So hopefully that can be helpful for you guys. Now, the one thing I do want to ask you, because you are one of the few human beings that works with CEOs and works with these companies and work with companies that are raising $5, $10+ million to then bring products to market or build teams. I would love, just because there's people that are not in this industry who want to be educated, but also there are, the reps that are in this industry, but maybe there's a lot of different ways they can go with it, whether they're going to climb the corporate ladder or then they go into startups, or there's a lot of ways to go. What have you learned the most working with these kind of companies of like CEOs, startups, like any advice that you have there, and or anything you can just shed light on that we would just give the listeners a little better experience of, like, you're not working at the big Medtronic and like doing this. You're working with all these different companies that are raising capital and coming into the markets and then building teams and revenues and growing everything.
Yeah, that's a tough question. So like, I mean, I've learned a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I think like as it relates to your audience, like again, so it's not that different. Like these CEOs are trying to raise money, from people. So they're trying to get people to give them money.
Yep.
And they're trying to sell product. And so at the end of the day, I think a lot of it comes down to like unwavering belief in what you're doing, with a positive mindset, and then the ability to know that like things sometimes they can take longer than we expect, but sometimes it happens faster than we expect. If that, it sounds a little paradoxical.
Yep.
And so I'll give you a great example is like one of the CEOs who I have a lot of respect for. He's a young guy. It's super successful is Josh DeFonso. He's the CEO of Mendera, which is a very cool medical robotics company. And they just closed a $75 million round. And we were at dinner and we're talking about it. We're talking about like CEOs raising money. And Josh has raised like hundreds of millions of dollars over his career because he worked at other companies.
Mm-hmm.
And, he told me like people underestimate like how many no's do you have to get? So like for him, when he was raising money, I think he pitched meetings, like not emails, like actually like 110, 120 times.
Wow.
To like, I don't know, more than 50 or 60 for like a lot. And my point about this is that if you look at a lot of great success stories, like look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA is $1 trillion company and everybody's talking about them now. But like, where were they the last 2 decades? The last 2 decades, like they were just like petering along. Their stock, which I knew about, was like barely $1 in 2015. Amazon for 2 decades, like lost money. Like there were these famous interviews with Jeff Bezos. You guys are losing more money every year, right? And so there's unwavering belief. I'll throw another example. Elon Musk. Like, he's the man of the hour now. But like, I remember back in 2010 when like Tesla was failing, SpaceX was a huge failure. Time magazine wrote this scathing article about him, how big of a failure he is and how stupid he was for investing in these companies and everything. But you have to have this just like deep, unwavering belief. And yes, screaming affirmations to yourself is not going to help. But speaking to yourself, and some of these people are so good. I don't think Elon Musk has affirmations, but he's developed it so deeply into his personality and character where it's just like, I will find a way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Nope.
And it's almost like every one of for those who did graduate from high school, like everyone, if you can remember back to when you were in high school, you knew you were going to graduate. Like you didn't have to tell yourself you're going to graduate. Like you just knew. If you took that same sort of belief that like, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to graduate from high school, or something like, I know how to tie my shoes. As simple as that, but expand that to the rest of your life and sort of have that same sort of calm confidence and energy.
Yep.
A lot of really, great things happen.
Yep.
And again, how do you get to that point? Well, maybe reading a lot, maybe listening to interviews, things that you can sort of subconsciously trick your mind into.
Yeah. And one thing I just want to mention on that is like, if you guys have watched this episode all the way through and then you watch like one with Johnny, right? And Johnny Kafar.
Johnny's great. I know Johnny believes the same thing.
Yeah. And you guys will see that. And you will link that episode after this one so you guys can watch it. But the reason I'm saying this is what you guys are all hearing, many of our listeners, especially when they're first trying to get started, they're like, Jacob, this is like, you're more talking about self-work and all the stuff, but I want you to give me tactical stuff that I can go get hired in med device sales. But what I'm trying to help you guys understand, and me and Omar and Johnny and all these people who've made it to what some people would say the top, or as we keep growing, and we still always have a mountain to go climb. But the reason I'm sitting here telling you that is because what you guys don't understand is the actual unlock potential for you is working on yourself, is becoming the person that we're talking about. Because if you're not where you want to be, it's not because you're not good enough. It's just you haven't become the person who needs to go get the results that you want. So whether that is reading books, whether that is starting to do meditation, whether that is looking yourself in the mirror and saying, I'm not as good as I actually think I am, and having a hard truth talk, which I had to have with myself because I was very confident. But then it's a double-edged sword. You have to be confident enough that you go put in the work. And I think that's the thing, is waking up at 4 a.m. every day to do workouts and reading the books, even though I was tired, is you build the confidence so you know you'll go do it.
Exactly.
But also having the hard check of, what was keeping me here and not getting me there was a certain thing that I just wasn't letting myself see. And again, same thing. I remember working with you when I first started this course and everything, we talked about it. Like, I grew 4x in literally 30 days with working with you.
Yeah.
By literally just you saying, well, that's not true. That's not true. You believe this and this is fake. And
what's funny is that's why I think coaching is really important, or at the very little, like record yourself. Because a lot of times we say things, we're not even aware that we're saying them.
Yep.
Something, another like, and I know we'll wrap up soon here, but like real quick, like something for your audience that they can do. And this is, again, I spend a lot of time reading and studying to figure out like, how can I best help people? So when I was at my most low in my career, this is something that I did, and your audience can do it. If you go look on Audible or Spotify for this one book called How to Stay Motivated by Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar is like a world famous sales guy. Yeah, Jacob did the same thing. He's got a very funny Southern accent, and he tells these stories. What you want to do is every morning when you wake up, your brain is in, I think it's either alpha or delta waves. It's in the most impressionable it is right when you wake up in the morning and right before you go to sleep. Go look at that audiobook and start listening to it first thing in the morning, first thing before you go to bed, and then in between. Like the first time you listen to this book, it takes a few hours. Don't listen to anything else that week, okay? Then you're going to listen to it again. You're going to listen to it again. You're listening to this book 16 times. It took me about a year and a half to do that. But the reason why it's so valuable, because those stories will slowly ingrain into your brain, into your mind. Your mind has kind of got like an operating system. You got to rewrite that code. There's a lot of bad code in there from like your messed up, family, or like your
fake beliefs or whatever.
Your limiting beliefs, everything. You got to rewrite that code. And so that book is a starting point for a lot of people that I coach and mentor, because of the stories you talk about in terms of how to think about life, about adversity, about confidence and everything. It's funny, it's uplifting, it's great. And for those of you, by the way, I'm going to comment on this. I'm not Christian, but Zig Ziglar is. I really enjoyed the stories he talked about, and that's from a Christian point of view. Like, it's not a Christian book, but he'll bring up some stories from the Bible. Be open-minded. Don't be one of those people. But I would really recommend all of your audience, whether they need it or not, start listening to that book from now, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of like thank you messages. Like and subscribe to my podcast. It's the best way you can thank me back, by the way.
Well, and just so you guys know why I'm smiling and laughing is 4:30 every morning, whether I was writing emails, whether I was messaging students, whether I was responding to emails when I was still working at a med device company. Every morning I woke up at 4:30 and I did that because he told me to, and I did it. And then there would be times that I have to go to the gym. Well, if I only had 15 or 25 minutes that day while I was driving, I would listen to it on the way to my gym.
Listen to it. Yeah.
And that started just changing my mindset. And just so you guys know, when I go back to when people come into our program and they're like, Jacob, how do you get people hired? Like, we've had people come in starting at $150,000, $175,000 with no experience. It's not because we're doing anything crazy. It's because we're actually changing how people think. And that's a big piece of this is self-development. Because I just want to give you all the love out here is because you're talking to the guy who 7 years ago had $66 to his name, 6 years ago, $1,200 to his name. And I moved out here, lived on an air mattress, and I had a hole in it. But every single day I was wanting to get better. For the last 7 years, I've done self-development, got mentors, did the stuff, just wanted to get a little bit better. And now everything I teach to our people is, I never thought I'd make $200,000 ever, right? Get into med device sales, do that over my first year. And the reason I'm sitting here saying this to people is because you have to start changing who you are currently to get to where you want to be. And that's the thing. Hopefully that's what you're just hearing from this is, again, the same person I was when I met Omar. I'm a way different person, and the person I'll be in 2-3 years will be another different version of myself. But it's always just making sure that you're investing in you, getting around yourself like-minded people. If you guys watch my LinkedIn, it's me always saying how grateful I am for someone like Johnny and someone like Omar, because these are two guys, and especially Omar is somebody who's helped me really see the other side of things. And, like you said, when I'll never forget the first time you started talking to me and like that, hey, I had an investor, he just raised $75 million. I'm like, what? I didn't even ever think I could make $1 million. You just talked to a guy who made $75 million. It makes you start thinking, you start getting curious. And I think that's if you take from this podcast is just be curious. Maybe questioning, because what helped me change and where I've 100x'd my income was literally by unlearning all the stuff that I knew that wasn't true, because I came from a family that was divorced. I came from unhealthy parents. I came from people who never made $50,000, $60,000 before. And they always, money's evil, money won't make you happy. And just so I can put this out there, money is not good or bad. Money is just money, right? And so it's the beliefs that we have around it that I had to start taking away from it. And that self-development has been what has helped me get in with a med device company, be a regional sales manager very young, be able to have success and be able to meet people like yourself to get me in rooms with CEOs and now talking with med device companies about massive deals, which is amazing for us and our members. But it would have never happened if I just wasn't curious. And so I just want to encourage everybody that's listening right now. I know this was a longer podcast where you guys are being like, well, I don't know if you guys went through all the stuff I wanted to hear from med device sales and all the things. But I can promise you, if you go back and listen to this multiple times and you just take notes and just do some of the actionable steps that Omar said, you guys, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, your life will be completely different.
Yeah, there's no cheat code. Like there's, at the end of the day, like a lot of things we talk about, I don't think is, there's no special like code or thing to do and everything. A lot of this, like, again, it's a lot of discipline and dedication and work, and you have to just do it over time. Like,
Yep.
like time is your friend. When if you decide to do something and do it over a longer period of time than other people, like even working out, like, if you are more committed to working out over a longer period of time and staying disciplined to your nutrition, like you'll have like a phenomenal body compared to other people.
Let me just put this here for everyone.
I talk about your phenomenal body though.
I'll talk about this. I'll just talk about the mindset that switched.
Jacob is ripped. Actually,
So the reason is like I used to be the guy who would work out every 2 to 3 months, and then I quit for 2 to 3 months and go back. And every time it sucked because I got really sore and it hurt. Then I want to see results, and then I see a little bit of results, and then I give up and stuff. And then I'll never forget. I remember asking myself, what if I just never stopped? I changed the mindset. Not, how much longer am I going to work out, or how long I've been? What if I just never stopped? Now, there may be days I don't work out. There may be weeks that I might not work out. But what if I just never stopped? And just so you guys know, that's how I always talked about, like, even med device sales. If you guys listen, you want to know why I broke in? Because I told people I was going to break in. It may take me 2, 3, 4 years, but I was going to break in. Now I had a goal to be like, hey, let's do it with 6 months with no experience. So I went as crazy. Now you guys don't have to do it because we just went through all the headaches and can help you. But the reason I'm saying that is it's no different than business. I can tell you what I thought my business was going to do 2 years ago. It's taken way longer to do, but it's also crazy how it happens. It's long, but it's fast at the same time. But I can just sit here and tell you why I always smile and I always am like, I know we're going to be successful, is I've come with the mindset of we're just never going to quit. We have headaches. You've seen me go through a lot of trials with things that have come up, of people coming at us, whatever it is. But I'm just like, what if we just never stopped? What if I do something every single day to keep adding value to the people we work with, or adding to our company, adding more people? That's when I'm like, I know we're going to just keep on winning. And it's just getting better each and every day. And so that's what I just want to put out there for everybody, is like, hey, your timeline for breaking into med device sales is 2 months, 6 months. That's why you feel so much pressure, because it's a fake timeline that you just made fakely. And what if you just said, hey, I'm going to give my all every single day until I'm in, and whether that's a month from now or 8 months from now or even a year from now, I'm going to be successful. No different than you get in the industry. We all want to be successful right away. But what if instead of being like, I have to be the top rep in the first year, you say, hey, I'm going to be a top rep, but I'm going to do everything right now to be a top rep as fast as possible. And here's the thing. It may take 3 years, but you might also be surprised. And you could be a top rep in 8 months if you really went. But I just wanted to put that out there, because that's what's changed a lot of my mindset here, is I no longer, yes, we have some timelines in doing it. But for example, I may say 12 months. Like a perfect example is this business right now. We set a goal that we were like, in June, we were like, hey, we want to accomplish it by the end of the year. We accomplished it 2 months later. So then we reassessed and we're like, okay, what now? We were ready for it to take 6 months, but it ended up only taking us 2 months, and then we go. So I just want to put that is, it's maybe change your timeline, because a lot of the timelines are just fake. Even with you, help me with this, the revenue goal, right? Let's say it's $20,000. Why? Why is it $20,000? Well, because it's just a number I heard that would make me rich, right? And you just start questioning it, and then you just say, but I'm going to just become the person who is to become that. It may take me a couple months, may take me a couple years, but if you start doing that, you'll get there. And the last cheat code to all of it, you want to make 20 grand a month, get around people making 20 grand a month or more, because they'll be able to teach you how to do it really fast, compared to the last thing you said it earlier, is ego.
I'll take it further. Yeah. Get around people who would be embarrassed to make 20 grand a month.
Exactly. Come on.
And that makes it a lot easier.
Because here's the thing, and what I want you guys to hear is, I've literally been on calls with young dudes. It's always the younger dudes that have told me, I'd rather take 3 years or 2 years, make $51,000, but be able to tell everyone I broke into medical device sales by myself. And say, hey, that's great, and I love that for you, but welcome to why I know you'll never be extremely successful. Because a LeBron James, a Michael Jordan, the top business people, the top entrepreneurs, they all have coaches, because they know the one thing they can't get back. They can always make more money, but they can't get back time. And for you, that's why I came and worked with you, was because at that point I was like, well, Omar's already doing this. He's already got the goals that I wanted to. Why would I keep hitting my head against the wall when I obviously don't do it? And then like that, invest with you, and a month later, 4X. And it's like, Oh,
You
wow.
can always get money back, man.
Yeah.
You can't get your time back.
And that's, I want people to hear that, because if you make under a couple $100,000 right now, that, like, I say this all the time, because reps will always come to me and they'll be like, I make 150, 160. And I'm like, great, I'm with an entrepreneur who makes $12 million a month. Who am I really trying to listen to on that realm? And so the reason I'm just saying that is getting around people and understanding to invest in yourself. Everyone will invest in a sick car, a sick house, what they want to flex on Instagram, the next vacation, but most people will never invest here and here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they always stay stuck and they don't accomplish the dreams. And then when they see other people doing it, they say it's fake, it's a scam, and whatever they want to say.
Exactly. No, exactly. And I think, like, at the end of the day, like, I mean, there's nothing wrong to have, like, nice things.
100%.
But just know why you have those nice things. Like,
Is it for you or is it for other people?
I mean, like, look, like, when I buy a nice watch, it's a status game. Like, I'm not, you know, I'm buying it because, like, it's a status game in the circles that I'm in, right? Yeah. Like, it, you know, like, is it a good investment? Like, yeah, kind of. But, like, you have to just be realistic with yourself about, like, why do I want these things?
Yep.
You know, I want to buy a nice car. It's like, okay, well, if you can buy that nice car and drive it around and no one would know you have it, like, would you still want that same car? It's like, maybe not. You know, so I think, like, just knowing that is more important. And then again, nothing wrong with having nice things, but invest in the places that are going to actually help you make more money. Like, buying a really, really nice car may not help you make more money.
This is my whole thing, because I see this all the time. Well, if I buy a nice car, it gets me to have people ask, and then it goes to this. But here's the crazier thing, and this is why I love Alex Hormozi. What if you just invested in the skills to where you could buy 19 nice cars? But if you just did it.
And again, it's a status thing. So, like, sometimes, like, sure, I get it. Like, even Neil Patel did this thing. He spent like $300,000 on his clothing, and, like, it actually improved his deal close rate. There's a great blog on that. But, like, my thing is, like, just ask better questions. The quality of your life is going to be reflected in the quality of questions you ask yourself.
100%.
You know?
Omar, man, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I know you got the family out here. It's Saturday. Again, I appreciate you recording this. Now, the one thing I just have to ask you is, where can people find you? What can they do to be able to get more from you?
So I'm on all platforms. So follow me on Instagram, omar.m.khatib. We also have a medical sales channel called All Hail Medical Sales. A lot of medical sales humor. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Check me out on X. I got some fire tweets. So check me out on X. And of course, like, the State of MedTech podcast. We're on all platforms, Spotify, YouTube, Apple. Go, like, subscribe to that show so you can get all the episodes. We publish 2 to 3 times episodes a week. And we got some amazing stuff in there. I mean, you'll learn from, like, the top most influential people in our industry if you just go and check out my podcast. And, you know, from there, you'll be off to the races. So that's where you can find me.
I love it, man. And thank you again for spending your time with us.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Honored to be here.
Yeah. And thank you guys. Again, just want you all to know, when we make these podcasts, is don't want anything from you, don't need anything from you. I'm just here to help you. And I hope this was a great episode.
No, screw that. Subscribe and review the show. That's what you should do. If you listen to this episode, you got this far, subscribe to the show and give them 5 stars. Come on, man.
I appreciate it. But the reason I just say this to you guys is, again, I always say this to our members, and it's why you see so many testimonials on our members, as I say, if I just helped you break into medical device sales and that's it, I feel like I failed. My whole goal is to continue to help you guys level up in life, because I always say this, you guys and every one of you, winning doesn't make me lose. I want you all to win. I want you to all have the best life, because as somebody who, you guys can go back and watch me in my $3,000 car, move out here with no money, live on the air mattress, do personal training, to where we're at today with the bringing great guests and having this beautiful studio and having great employees, is I just want to keep encouraging you. It's possible and you can do it. And so I just want you all to know, is my goal is not to only help you break into med device sales, but become the most successful version of you that you want to become. And so if this can help somebody, share it with them. Like Omar said, if you can like and subscribe, it would mean the absolute world. But again, I just want you all to know, my whole goal of making new to medical device sales and making First Year In is to make sure that we can just keep helping other people have success. Because instead of being in a world, which I see a lot of times in med device sales, where it's egotistical and it has to be me, just me, and I get all the praise, I would much rather watch you guys get the praise. And I would much rather you guys, we give back so you can all have success, so you can go change your lives, and maybe you'll just change other people's lives, and it's just great karma. And that's what my whole goal is, and that's why this has grown, is just to finish with, is I made this never once thinking about a program. I did this for a year just helping people, and then one day when I had hundreds of messages, I was like, I can't do this all at once and help people, and maybe I have something valuable here. And so I just tell you guys, when I say this is, again, we know we can help you. If you want the help, we can help you get to where you want to be. And it's not just about med device sales. We're going to help you in a lot of other aspects in life, as hopefully you're getting from these free episodes. But I just want you to know, I want you to win. I want you to go live your best life. And until next time, keep hustling, keep going after your goals, and go live the best life. Peace.